Bradbeer sitting in for Dr. Brandis tonight. I appreciate everyone being here right on time, and it's great that we don't have anyone online. It's better to be here, I think. First thing to do is roll call. So would you please state your name for the record?
Victoria Marshall here.
Eric Schlogel.
Kurt Collins.
Christina Schlogel here.
Joel King here.
Terry Hopkins here.
Rick Riker here.
Tom Bradbeer here.
Kathleen Crone.
Adriana Reinhardt.
Rob Pell.
Mike Pelfrey.
Thank you all very much. One more. Seth is here as well. Our first presentation will be the Administration Department budget. Mr. Kubik.
Good evening, Budget Committee members and staff and members of the public. I'm here to present the Administration Department's recommended fiscal year 26 budget. So there are quite a few departments that were in divisions we're talking about. They're listed here behind me, and I'll go through those one at a time. I do want to note, as people have noted before in the past, that the budget does follow Council's strategic plan and encompasses all the goals and work plan elements. It provides the opportunity to allocate resources, for you to allocate those resources for Council to achieve its goals. So we're going to start with policy and legislation, which is on page 123 of your big book. So we won't really be using capital for me today. It'll be pretty much all in the big book, and policy and legislation is on page 123. What that is that revenues are general support, general fund, non-dedicated funds. They include revenues coming in like franchise fees, business tax, state revenue sharing. The budget items serve the whole city. And then we've got also this budget represents the contingency. So taking a look at the budget, it's a relatively larger budget because it does represent the contingency. Contractual services is the first item. There is a reduction of about $8,600. The reduction is from the movement of public art grant funds to economic development. So no program changes, but we're allocating it now under economic development. We've got a minor change in direct charges. Indirect charges, there's a change to the methodology to include administrative charges, so that's why there's an increase there. Transfers out, no changes. That's for special events. It's $50,000. So each year, Council a few years ago set a policy priority that we do take on some certain community events because no one else was picking them up in the community. So we do 4th of July, we do Christmas tree lighting, and we do Art Along the Rogue. So that $50,000 represents those three events. And then we have contingency. So the contingency is down $1.2 million. This is still within our fund balance parameters. We're looking at, with the fiscal year 26 recommended at $10,891,000 of it being about 25.54%. So it's at the bottom end of our fund balance, but it still meets those parameters. As compared to last year, it was at 30%.
Mr. Kubik,
Yes?
would you like questions as you go or after your presentation?
Whatever you like. Questions as we go is fine.
All right, then I have one.
Okay.
For fiscal 26, the contingencies are shown clearly, and there is no unappropriated ending fund balance. And there are differences between them, and I've had conversations with Mr. Rowley about that. I wonder if you would quickly review why it's better to be all in contingency and not a little bit in both.
Well, as I mentioned, started, I'll have JC take over, but contingency does provide for the potential of future more flexibility for Council, but there is a longer discussion to have when it comes to those two items. JC, do you want to fill in? Or?
Yeah, there's some legal requirements there. If you put it into ending fund balance, you really can't touch it unless there is a true FEMA incident. And so again, this is giving council the maximum flexibility with these dollars. Now, in order to utilize contingency, you still have to have some kind of a public forum, whether it's via resolution or when it gets over a certain dollar threshold, it has to be actually a public hearing. So there is input from the public if council were to utilize these funds. And again, it's to give council maximum flexibility.
But appropriating an unappropriated ending fund balance would require a budget hearing. Is that right?
You cannot appropriate an unappropriated ending fund balance
In an emergency.
except for in an emergency. And it's kind of deemed like it's got to be a massive flood kind of emergency, not a we just really need it kind of emergency.
And is the contingency limited to existing line items in the budget?
May need to restate your question. Are you saying that there's contingency built into other line items or?
No, in terms of the limits on how contingencies can be used with council approval.
So yeah, it is flexible to where there needs to be a public either resolution or a hearing depending on the validity of that. But it doesn't matter if it's $1 being moved out of contingency or $10 million, there needs to be some kind of public action.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know on are each of these a line item then that you keep track of?
Yeah, there's
Or do you keep track of the whole program?
So this is the program for the general fund
Yeah.
only, not
Right.
for the rest of the programs. We do track and monitor, and on June 4th, actually, we will be presenting a supplemental budget, which will utilize some of the contingencies in the general fund, which was based off of council's actions, motions, and recommendations.
Okay, so you do track contingency as a line item?
Yeah, you kind of have to, right? It's part of the overall
Okay.
budget.
So last year, did we zero out that line item or what, or was it?
So you typically do not spend a contingency, and that might be part of the confusion of just because it is a budgeted item, you
And then
don't
that results
spend
in the
it.
carryover, the 24 or 25%.
You need to carry it over, or it moves into an appropriated line item. So you need to have it appropriated, whether it's by category or by program, in order to spend it. If council wants to utilize contingency, you don't technically spend it out of contingency. You have to spend it out of
Okay.
the program in which you're trying to utilize.
Right. So, well, then when you allocate it to other projects, did we zero it out last year?
We did not zero out the contingency. I believe we used a little bit last year for some last minute items, which I think we utilized a similar dollar amount for this year, like the Christmas parade. In August of 2024, we did a supplemental budget that moved contingencies into the establishing the resting sites program, because that's where we were going with those.
Sure, and there's always those items that are going to come up. I just wondered, what is our history in terms of reallocating that and what would be the ending balance?
Yeah, so typically we don't utilize the contingencies for more than maybe $100,000 of the correction items here and there. Obviously, with the resting sites, we have over $325,000. We'll be bringing in some additional monies because that kind of climate ever seems to be changing as far as what we're spending in those. But I wouldn't expect us to be anywhere north of $500,000 unless there truly was a council item and an action item that was truly important to council to utilize those funds.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, as I mentioned, there's a number of departments I'm going through here and divisions I'm going through, and I don't think a lot of them are controversial. Probably the closest one to being controversial will be this one, which is the resting sites. This is under policy and legislation. This budget includes the following expenses associated with the resting sites that we currently have in place. And as you're aware, we are at this time required to have some resting sites based on a lawsuit and some things that we're doing here in House Bill 3115. Here's the budget for the resting sites. Not a large change in this budget. There is a reduction from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26 of $30,000 under capital outlay. That represents in 25, we needed $30,000 to purchase a mobile camera truck system. It's right out across the street here, solar and all that kind of good stuff. That cost us $30,000. We're not anticipating needing to purchase another one at this time, so we zeroed out that capital outlay. We don't see that as a necessary item. The other items are associated with some of the biggest item that you see here, likely from a cost perspective, is the contractual and professional services. Just to give you an idea what's in that, those costs include things like the porta potties, trash pickup, fencing, garbage, the services that are provided at the resting sites. Any questions on the policy and legislation budget?
Go ahead.
So does these numbers include the changes that were made in regards to the adding the additional sites and all of the other things that we've had to spend money on to bring these resting sites into compliance?
Yeah, that's a great question. We believe with the numbers that we have presented to you that would represent us being able to keep a status quo type of service level that you're seeing right now today. If there was some major legal changes or something that required some major changes in service and those kind of things, we would flex with that, or maybe we'd need to have a conversation with council and the use of contingency funds or something along those lines. Okay. Administrative services, mayor and council. This budget includes meeting costs, the airing of our meetings, training and travel, League of Oregon Cities, facility management, some direct charges, advertising for committees, and community surveys. Not a large change in this budget. There was a small change in contractual and professional services. The decrease represents between fiscal year 25 and 26 a decrease in 25. We had budgeted to spend $18,000 on strategic planning through a consultant service. We did not spend that this year. Staff did the facilitation of that, and we're not anticipating needing that consulting services for fiscal year 26, so it is not in the budget.
Aaron, can you go into a bit of detail on that page 236, what the line item for administrative services operations covers?
We're going to get to that in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Administrative service management services, page 239. This is the implementation of council policy and city goals, some citywide administration, budget process and direction, legislative support, internal, external, public relations, intergovernment relations. So this budget here, you've got personnel, which represents a larger portion of that. That really basically is wages, PERS, et cetera, associated with FTE. You have materials and some small materials and supplies. The increase there from 4,500 to 15,700 is we need to replace some computers. So that's some electronic costs associated with that. Everything else, contractual professional services, there's a small decrease because of movement of insurance and telephone and internet to direct charges. And then direct charges went up because contractual professional went down.
Yes, go ahead.
So I was reading in policies and, well, the stuff that JC gave us a week ago, and it said that there is planning for the personnel increase, salary increase. Is that what that is showing us?
You mean
know what I'm saying?
You mean, so we have presented in the budget opportunities for council to be able to have allocations for collective bargaining agreements and non-bargaining that's in front of you and going to council on Wednesday. Is that shown in this line item? Yes. Continuing with administrative services, legal services is on page 244. And it's somewhat self-explanatory, but Stephanie is a big part of that. We've got personnel services, materials and services, contractual, professional, very small minor changes with regards to this budget item.
Proceed.
Administrative services, human resources, we have Mandy here in case there's any complicated questions or any questions at all. I'd be referring to Mandy to help me out with that. This is on page 246. Human resource services, we do a lot. We have 234 full-time employees with about 25 part-time employees. We have a number of vacancies throughout the year that we're always recruiting for. We have 5 collective bargaining agreements. So we keep very busy along with other benefits administration, leave of absence management, et cetera, that HR provides. Their department represents 4 FTE. Following is the budget for HR. The increase in personnel services is just in line with the increases based on collective bargaining agreements and PERS, et cetera. Everything else is relatively similar. The contractual services did go down briefly. That reduction is due to a reduced need for consultants based on scheduled projects for the coming year. We didn't feel as though we needed that much in contractual and professional services, so we reduced the budget by $25,000.
Councilor King.
So I appreciate what you do, Aaron. I just want to state the obvious, and if it's wrong, you can correct me. So, council, we have not set the wages yet for the non-bargaining unit, and the bargaining units, several of them are still in negotiations.
Yes.
So these are placeholders.
Yes.
And when we get the actual figures, then if there's any adjustments that need to be made, they can be made, either
Yes.
up or down.
Yes. Try to provide some flexibility for council. Ultimately, we don't know where those collective bargaining agreements will go. I think we have 3 in the upcoming year that we're needing to negotiate.
Right.
You're currently in negotiations. Council's currently in negotiations with Firefighters Association.
Right.
So you need to have some flexibility to be able to negotiate with.
And the same thing with the non-bargaining unit, that they're just placeholders, and then we'll finalize those through personnel, or not through personnel action, through council action.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to talk about the data on page 246. Human resources performance measures, the number of positions processed, 63. This is a busy department.
It's extremely busy.
And we've talked about the costs of having vacant positions and the impact on the overall operation. And I'm wondering if the budget has adequate support for marketing, recruitment, and filling the vacant positions.
Well, I'll have Mandy come up, our HR director, and she can provide you some additional insight to your question.
Thank you. That's a great question. Right now, presently, we do most of our recruitments in-house. If we're unable to successfully attract candidates, then we have utilized external recruitment assistance through contractors and vendors. At this time, we have not exceeded our budget utilizing those services, and we're hopeful that we can continue with the trend that we are currently on. Thank you.
Next under administrative services is we have operations. This could be found on page 249. This is administrative services revenues, and they're centralized for all administrative departments. Administrative services, the purpose is to provide funding for centralized administrative service costs like personnel, payroll, finance, legal, or other supportive services to help the whole organization. This is a more cost-effective and efficient way to provide services throughout the organization. Things include internal support, employee education recognition, copy and general office services, postage, phone services, and some contingency. The budget here is shown. There are some minor changes. under materials and supplies, miscellaneous office supplies, there was a reduction. That reduction just represents a reduction in employee appreciation. It's just in order to try to keep costs down, we did lower that a little bit. Let's see, capital outlay has been reduced to some degree, along with transfers out. Transfers out is the $80,000 represents emergency management services. So we transfer that out to go to fire department to help pay for Chief Sanchez's position, as he is also the emergency manager and very highly qualified at that also.
Aaron, on the contractual professional services, it increased by $64,000. Was that just recognizing increased costs for those services, or did we add something?
So the one thing we added is we added the opportunity to do a PAVE project this upcoming year. There was some potential interest with the previous council and maybe with some of the current council, and we haven't done a PAVE for the past two years or so. So we thought it'd be good to have that flexibility in there in case we wanted to do a PAVE on, say, community development or building or planning or whatever department it may be. So we have that flexibility for council to do a PAVE program.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
That's administrative services.
Yes.
Mine's just more of a comment. Last year, during your presentation, you talked about having like a legal assistant for a legal attorney. And I don't know if that went anywhere or if it's still being considered. And then the comment I want to just add is if we are going to do a municipal court, I'm not sure if Stephanie will have the time to do the prosecution of that, or if we're going to be able to hire an assistant attorney, associate attorney, however that's going to go, and whether or not the judge for the municipal court would be in this legal services budget. So just things to ponder as we consider the municipal court.
Thank you. Yes, we are looking at municipal court services, and that would ultimately be its own department and division, and would have its own set of dedicated resources and expenditures.
This is kind of taking a step back. I know when I was the budget economist for the Forest Service for the forest, when you put together a budget, it's a great time to ask what-if questions, because you can do your homework. What if this is a higher priority, we want to emphasize this, what does it cost in terms of the other programs? One of the things as we work through this, and I don't know if it's appropriate here or not, but the number one priority in strategic planning for the last couple of years has been emergency services. And staffing is an option there. And I have never really seen or know what the trade-off costs in the budget are if we increased public safety to accommodate some additional positions as priority number one. And I guess we can do that independently, from the dais as a council person, or perhaps the budget, looking at the bigger picture, just like a couple of years ago when we honestly didn't know where we were, the people up here didn't know where we were going to get $1 million in cuts. Remember that? And we didn't have the expertise for that. And so what we said was, can you come back to us with a proposal that you think would be realistic to have $1 million, and you did that.
That was City Council, and that was City Council asking staff to provide some recommendations on reduction of budget.
He also did it for the Budget Committee, though. And the Budget Committee asked you that as staffing, because we were grappling with that as a Budget Committee. So it happened here as well. And so I'm struggling with that a little bit in terms of, so that is the number one priority from strategic planning, and I still don't know the answer to that question.
We have not explored the answer to that question yet. That will begin June 30th at the City Council level, where you'll start to explore public safety, level of service, funding needs, and et cetera, and you'll be exploring all those things starting June 30th.
Yeah.
It's a very, as you know, it's a very complex question.
Sure.
And it has complex solutions that are going to require a lot of time to determine what the true best community solutions are.
And it has a lot of budget implications for other programs as well.
It certainly does. That's something that council's going to have to address.
And that as we go through that, as a budget committee, I would like to address it here, but as long as it gets addressed. I know before we addressed the $1 million cuts in the budget committee.
So city council is the one that addresses those topics that you're talking about, and it will be addressed and started to be addressed June 30th.
Okay, okay. And we'll know what other services we would give up if we finance those positions.
Those are discussions, as you're well aware, Councilor King.
The opportunity costs.
You've been through this rodeo once before, and it was about a 1.5 year process. JC and I were talking, other communities, if you're looking at doing that, it's about a 2-year process to really determine levels of service, funding, and what's the best way to do something like that for the community.
Well, to me, it's fairly simple. Maybe I simplify it too much. If you add a position here and it's not budgeted presently, you got to get that money from somewhere else. And where do you get that money from? And so if you added 4 positions for the police and 4 positions for the fire, that money has to come from somewhere. And so if it's a higher priority, then where does that money come from? What are we giving up to do that?
So you're talking policy decisions at a council level, Councilor.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
Or we could talk about marbles if you'd like.
I like marbles better. It needs to be done because that opportunity costs need to be done.
Staff's very much looking forward to the June 30th meeting and having those discussions with council.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Terry.
Perhaps this waits to the end, but tailing off of Joel and me also trying to comprehend, and I'm a rule follower, stay in my lane and be a budget committee member, not try to be a counselor. For example, like on page 56, or previous on other meetings, we talked about addition of FTE for positions like wastewater. I'm curious to understand how level of service in public safety differs from wastewater, because it does look like there was an increase in FTEs proposed in the budget in other positions.
So level of service, that depends. For instance, so we're not necessarily changing level of service when it comes to meter reading. We have lost the opportunity for us to truly contract for meter reading services. So we're taking that on in-house. It's not a change in level of service. It's a change from the way we're operating, the organization is operating.
I understand that, but I think that was a separate, the change for utility and meter reading I understood was a contract versus a hired employee. But on page 56 of our budget book, it does show a net increase of 1.5 FTEs. And if I recall correctly, the meter reading wasn't wastewater, it was a different department, and wastewater had an increase.
So meter reading touched both water and wastewater, but you are correct, we did add an FTE, or we have requested an add of an FTE to the collections department, and it is not to increase the level of service, but to ensure that we can meet the level of service, because we've been struggling to meet our footage requirements as well as our cleaning requirements in that division.
Okay. Fair, and also in staying in my lane, I don't understand how we couldn't take that exact statement that he just made and put it in police. We're not trying to increase our level of service, we're just trying to maintain what's existing, given the outside circumstances of homelessness and drug addiction requires more personnel.
Part of that is associated with the council needing to have a determination on how to balance increasing level of service or maintaining level of service if it requires additional revenues or cuts in other services. We have an enterprise fund that is healthy enough for us to provide the flexibility from an operational perspective to do so. We do not have that flexibility in any general fund operations.
There's no opportunity costs in the utility. Well, there is, but it's not an existing service.
Excuse me. Talk a little bit about the separation of the enterprise funds from the general fund. To talk about trade-offs in positions, they're two separate funds, and we couldn't reduce Public Works in order to increase public safety. They're in different funds.
That is correct. I know JC mentioned that somewhere in the beginning during the budget message, that the funds are, there are a number of funds. General fund is the one that's most flexible. It can go anywhere, but the enterprise funds do have to stay within their own funds and can't be shared with other funds.
I think from my perspective, I understand the different funds. I'm just trying to get a better comprehension on the procedure and expectation of budget committee.
So when we go through comprising the budget, we do look at our current revenue stream and our current expenses, which is our current staffing level as a baseline for presenting the budget. When we pulled everything together and all the information, we were right at 25.54%, which is right above the minimum fund balance policy. In order for staff to come forward with a recommendation, we would need to have a firm position as to making that recommendation and being able to adhere to that, because I think as a staff, we don't want to recommend increasing staffing if potentially we're going to have to cut in a future year if no policy decisions are made, which is why I think Aaron's keeps alluding to June 30th, as it really does require a future policy decision as far as where we're going with the general fund.
Again, I can wait to the end, but could you use that exact example to, because I know public safety is a very difficult conversation, but could you use that exact example in how we rationalize the increase to the wastewater or other departments without it going to council?
Yeah, I would say that it still does go to council and through this budget committee as part of the process, which is why it's presented on page 56 like you've shown. It's not a hidden thing. Jason's bringing it forward as far as his recommendation of what he needs to run his departments. Now, the fortunate thing that Jason has with some of the Muni Code and some of the way we charge out is their rates are pegged with the CPI, so they get to actually get inflationary increases year to year, whereas the general fund doesn't necessarily receive those, and we've been lacking as far as inflation the last few years of seeing 8 and 5% when property tax really is capped at 3%.
All right, information technology. I know some people had some questions on my first night with information technology. I do have Ken here, and he'll be more than happy to answer any questions if you have an IT question. We have a great IT department. They do all of the things that are up on the screen behind me. We have a relatively, I think, stable budget between fiscal year 25 and 26 and what we're asking for. Small increases in personnel services associated with things that I've mentioned before. There are some, the largest change is probably the direct charges, and the direct charges reflects a change in the allocation methodology of LB 6327, Technology Lifecycle Management, which should replace the transfer moving forward, as well as the change of insurance, internet, phone, vehicle maintenance, and other equipment replacement. So that's why that has gone up. Other than that, other items have stayed pretty stable.
So Aaron, do we have a ballpark figure when we change out equipment, how much equipment we're involved with? Like, is it 10 computers or 100 computers, or is it just within IT, or is it the entire city?
Well, I would love to have Ken come up and explain some more about our life cycle management for computer equipment.
Good evening. As far as end user computers, each division budgets for replacement of those devices, laptops, tablets, desktop computers. We recommend a 5-year replacement plan. The line item, or the item that Aaron referenced, the technology lifecycle project, that's for our servers, enterprise storage, and networking equipment. We try to get as much as the manufacturer will allow before they will quit supporting the devices, and typically that's 7 years. And we don't have large amounts of equipment that are being replaced every year. We're trying to keep keep it down as far as the number of items we have on site, but
So also, do we use cloud storage as well as on-site?
yes, we are. We're using cloud storage primarily for our backups, for storing off-site, out of region, with immutable data, so they can't be altered once they're stored there.
Good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Pelfrey?
So what do you do with the equipment that you replace? What is the strategy with that equipment?
Hard drives have to be destroyed. The computers themselves, we send to an e-recycler. There's places in, well, I think both the disposal companies in town will take e-recycling. When we have very large amounts, there's a recycler in Medford that will come and palletize and take them away. So nothing is going in the trash.
So we're not putting them on the corner and putting a sign that says free?
No, we are not.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about artificial intelligence. There a lot of talk about how it will increase productivity and revolutionize the way large organizations manage data and communications. Is there planning for adopting machine learning in municipal operations? Is the budget sufficient to support that? And do you see that there's going to be benefit?
I think there will be benefit. What we're seeing is there's a component of AI that's more end-user based. It's your chat, it's your asking questions, it's analyzing this document. I think the biggest gain for probably any organization is when your enterprise applications, Munis for financials, our permitting and planning software, New World for police and fire and dispatch, when AI is now introduced as part of those applications. And so they're creating efficiencies, they're creating analytics that staff might be able to do, but it would take longer to do. And I think that's where we'll see the greatest benefit. And that's relying on a vendor to actually start bringing those components to bear within the applications.
Will each department be deciding what application they might adopt that is based on machine learning? And is there any concern about security? Is DeepSeek as good as ChatGPT?
There is definitely a concern about security and data privacy and data ownership, and we are working now on a AI acceptable use policy. We are a Microsoft Enterprise customer, and we're in their government cloud. They have just this year began rolling out their Copilot AI to the government cloud. And so by using that, it does give us enterprise data protection. So, but any application that we implement, the data privacy, the data ownership is definitely going to be a major criteria.
Thank you. Eric.
I know that as a budget committee here, we're trying to figure out costs and all that. I guess the question I have for you is, do we have any strategies, do we have any systems in place to lower costs and see where we can figure out what we can do to lower the costs and be more efficient? Because I know a lot of this equipment is very expensive. So just wondering, as a city, do we have anything in place for that specifically?
We don't have a formal policy in place or a system, but that is something we're doing on an annual basis as equipment replacement comes up. It's, do we need to replace that? Can we hold off? Can we consolidate? What can we do to stay within our means and reduce costs?
So it's up to you as the IT director to do that?
Yes. And individual departments, they, as replacement comes up, they're deciding, well, this desktop computer's up for replacement. We don't really have a need for that or need for that tablet, and consolidating where they can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Go ahead, Mr. Kubik.
Workers' comp is on page 276.
That's an important one.
This is wage replacement and injury and illness care related to workplace incidents. We do this through SAFE, through the State Accident Insurance Fund Corporation. We also have part of this whole workers' comp thing on page 276. We have a safety committee. It is a requirement by Oregon Occupation Safety and Health. We're responsible for reviewing injuries and accidents, conducting job hazard analysis, reviewing and updating safety policies, investigating worker comp claims. The whole idea is to try to avoid those worker injuries, and they do a great job doing that. Our safety committee does. So here's the budget, which is on page 277. It is, you've got materials and services, contractual services is up, contingencies are down a little bit. The contractual services is up because we have gone from a city experience mod factor of 1.01 to 1.15, and that has increased our costs, unfortunately, because of our rating and some of the injuries that we have received in the past year. We have contingencies down a little bit. That just represents that some of our cases and those injury cases are off the books now, so we don't have to hold a contingency for them. So our contingency is now reduced because of that.
Councillor King.
So this is an important one to me because it's kind of a monitor level of service and staffing. So our rating went down because we had increased claims, or the amount of claims were more expensive?
No, yeah, our rating went up because of the cost of our claims went up.
Was it any one department where it went up, or was it across the board, or?
Mandy, I don't have that number in my head, or that information in my head.
Thank you. That's a great question. We had increases in police and fire injuries, and we also had several people that were out for longer periods of time due to some of the legal changes within workers' comp coverage. So that is part of what led to the increase in the experience rating. We are trending in a better direction right now and hope that we continue through this fiscal year with a downward experience modification.
One of the things that happens, I think, in workforce stress, especially if you're understaffed, is the workman's comp. You start paying for it regardless, and the workman's comp goes up. And ours went sky high, and it was not good.
No, we're hoping, like we said, that we continue the trend that we're on right now.
Yeah, we need to keep a close eye on that.
And that's true. It's very important.
Thank you.
The data on page 278 shows a significant drop in claims paid. I think that's responsive to your concern, Council. 278.
This may be a question for Mandy. Is the new family leave law impacting on this?
So paid leave Oregon and the leave laws are not directly related to workers' comp. However, we have had some staffing shortages as employees are out on leaves. So to speak to what Councillor King said, that can be a workplace stressor.
Thank you.
Yep.
Another question?
Mandy, I just wanted to ask something on the
Better stay up there, Mandy.
Right here.
monthly manager's report. I seem to see that there were 41 leave of absences. Did I see that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Year to date?
Year to date. And I should clarify, when we're tracking those, they're not necessarily a continuous leave. Depending on the purpose of the leave, it can be an intermittent leave, and it can extend throughout the whole year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have general insurance, which is on page 279. That represents our general liability, property coverage, auto, cyber liability, excess quake, etc. City County Insurance is our insurance company for that. And that is the budget for those things. Personnel is, again, employee administration time reflects additional cost, insurance costs to departments. Contractual professional services is up just a little bit. And of course, that represents general liability increases and property increases and costs associated with that.
Does the city carry flood insurance on all the facilities?
Well, we probably carry flood insurance on those facilities that are in the floodplain. Karen will come up and tell you about our flood insurance.
So yeah, we carry flood insurance on the water restoration plant. There's certain properties, actually parts of the properties that are in the floodplain that we have to carry it on, but otherwise we don't. Yep.
Aaron, whenever a criminal defendant causes damage to city property, there's generally an order of restitution. Do you know if these damages, like the police car, for example, physical damage to the cars, includes, what the city puts out before any reimbursement, or how does the reimbursement or coverage get calculated into this, if at all?
We generally don't see restitutions for those types of things, and we see restitutions for somebody hitting a light pole or things like that. But things that go to court, if it goes through the DA's office and it comes through, then they just ask whatever, what was involved in the charges, and then we have the department determine what those costs are.
I didn't hear that last part, sorry.
So we have the department determine what the costs are, and then we submit them to the DA.
And then in the off chance somebody ever pays restitution, where does that money go?
It goes back to the department. And actually, we do get restitution. Sometimes it's $2.38, but we'll get something.
Next is Benefit Administration Fund. This is our wellness program, fitness reimbursement. We have some benefit fairs, wellness committee, trying to keep our citizens safe and promoting a healthy lifestyle. We provide some fitness reimbursement to encourage employees to work out and be members of gyms. So there's the budget for this. Let's see, biggest changes here. Materials and supplies, that's just an additional cost of safety equipment and some employee appreciation associated with that. And contingencies are down just a little bit. Well, that concludes my administration department, and I wanted to make sure I concluded with some lovely pictures of some animals. So I'll turn it over to JC to talk about some of his departments. Thank you very much. Got to pack up all my stuff. There.
Yeah, turned it off. I shouldn't have. Good evening, Budget Committee. My name is J.C. Rowley. I'm the Finance Director here. And I'm going to go over the finance budget, and then I'll kind of pause after I do the finance budget and go through some of the other programs that you haven't heard of. These are programs that kind of finance looks after, and they're kind of administrative in nature. So first for finance, I'm going to go over our department organization. I'm going to go over what our services are, where our efficiencies have led us, some trends and challenges ahead, and again, go over some of these auxiliary funds in my presentation. So departmental organization, I have what I like to call the front half and the back half of finance. I have 14 FTE. The back half is listed here as far as the people behind the scenes doing all the number crunching and all the movements. For budget, audit, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, treasury activities, financial control and reporting, grant administration, miscellaneous billing, and other support. I believe this is 7 people doing all of these things for the entirety of the city. On the front half, I have the people that everybody gets to see and talk to over the phone for utility billing. They do the customer service. They also take in the business tax, the lodging tax, parking tickets and municipal citations, parking permits. They also do daily cash balancing, lien tracking, reporting and billing, and other licensing and customer service. Financially, what that equates to is here on page 243. You'll see that our personal services are up, much like Aaron has talked about with other departments and everybody else before. There is some non-bargaining in here. I have the luxury of having, I think, 7 to 8 people who are relatively new to the city. I think less than 2 years of experience with the city. So that means that those people are going to be moving up in their grading steps as they move forward in the next year, which is part of that increased cost. The big decrease here of the $152,000 is the meter reading contract here, and as well as the move out of the insurance and telephone and internet into the direct charges. The transfer out, we've zeroed that out and moved that into direct charges as that is an equipment replacement. That's kind of my test case for the city. We have $25,000 printer for our utility bills that we weren't saving for. So a couple years ago, I designed a equipment replacement for finance specific to make sure that we can save smaller amounts year to year. And then when that machine comes up for replacement, we'll have the funds to replace that, as well as a couple other expensive machines that we have in the back there for our utility billing. So I'll pause here and make sure there's no questions.
Questions?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So some of our budget changes, we don't have any staffing changes, obviously the meter reading. There are our other contractual services. It does include a little bit of meter reading. There's some transitional costs as well as some technology. Jason and I haven't necessarily nailed down all of the details. We think that there are potentially some handheld, some technology that will be purchased from the customer service side because they're not necessarily indicative of people out in the streets, but we need those people to have handhelds in order to read those meters. So we have some money in there. Banking services, fraud prevention, our investment advisor, which is well worth the money. Our financial software maintenance is here, as well as printing and mailing, which is performed by Aspire, and I'll go into that on the other side with financial efficiencies. So with technology, we do utilize a bunch of technology. We have check scanning, electronic payments, citywide business software, e-permitting, interactive voice response, which I believe we just implemented our Hispanic-speaking IVR. We've created, within the last year, a web payment portal for things that are not utility billing. With the staffing, we have a contract for staffing and mailing for utility bills, which is Aspire. And then obviously, it saves my time to hire an investment advisor to handle the day-to-day investment of our portfolio.
Thank you, J.C. PP&L and Avista utilities have moved to paperless notifications and billing. Have we looked at that and seen if there could be a potential savings?
Yeah, we offer that. It's getting people to sign up for it. I believe on our end, and you may correct me, I think we're legally obligated to not necessarily force people to do that. They have to opt in.
In terms of the accounts receivable area, if there are delinquencies from households in paying water bill, for example, how is that issue approached? How hard is it for someone to get their water turned off?
I'm going to get the amount wrong, but there's a dollar threshold that I believe we do about a 2-month average before we turn somebody off as far as being delinquent. In the event that people are delinquent, our customer service supervisor, Kimberly Gasperson, walks through it with the individual and gives them all their opportunities. We try and give payment plans. We have worked with St. Vincent de Paul that handles our delinquency shut-off program. Again, we try and give everybody the avenue and the opportunity to bring themselves up to current.
Has the delinquency rate been rising, falling? Do you have any data on that?
It's a really good question. Yes, rising. Last year was the first year in budget that we hit the entirety of the $50,000 that the city puts forward to the utility assistance program. This year we increased that to a little bit over $72,000, and I believe we ran out of money in about March. And so we are seeing an uptick in delinquencies, along with other data of building permits slowing down, lodging tax revenue decreasing. Economically, right now, it does appear to be that we may be heading into a recession.
The Employment Department just released recent data on unemployment in Grants Pass, and it's up, not horribly, but at least 4.7%.
So I do have some trends and challenges ahead. We have a bunch of connectivity to the financial system, and technology seems to be the thing that we are dependent on. I'm very fortunate to employ a couple staff that are very handy with not only Excel, but actually being able to write code within Excel to where they can program something easier for a staff member that is on an entry-level position. If those things break, that does create a huge burden for us. And if the financial system does break, that creates a huge burden for us. When the internet goes down and Ken has to send out that notification, that is a huge burden for us. We are highly, highly dependent on computer systems to gain those efficiencies, where we're sitting at 14 FTE. Before I got here, I believe we had a couple more FTE, and we've been able to keep those off the books because of our efficiencies and where we've gained in technology. When we look forward financially, there's always something that is being presented that we need to implement for the city. It doesn't get a lot of press, but they are different complications as to how we show numbers. They are meant to be to the benefit of the city and show your financial statements the way that maybe a corporate financial statement would be presented, but there are certain nuances that government doesn't necessarily practice, and so it does make it difficult for us to implement because we don't view the world the same way as a corporate tax return does. But they are trying to curb us into that area to make sure that we, as a loan opportunity, potentially look the exact same. So we do have some difficulties coming ahead of us. Federal funds, we've gotten a lot of federal funds as of recently. They do require a single audit, anything over $750,000, and so that does increase the bandwidth and the attention that I have to dedicate staff to each one of those, both on the front end, because we want to make sure we're doing it right the first time, and then on the back end when the auditors are here to actually go through each of those programs. And then obviously, Jason and his water treatment plant, as well as public safety funding, which has been brought up before. That is a huge uplift for finance to run projections and numbers and make sure that we're presenting everything to council to make the best decision or informed decision moving forward. And I'll take any questions, but before I do, I just want to thank Mindy Ellerman in the back. She's a huge reason as to why all your guys' book and information looks the way it is, as well as Kimberly Gasperson on our customer service side. She does an excellent job. For me, she probably works more for Jason than she does for me. She's been here a long time, and she's a great asset for the city.
I may be getting a little granular here, but do you know what the amount for postage is? You know, every bill I can, I try and go paperless, pay online, auto pay, and it seems like my City of Grants Pass Utilities is the exception. I always have to check the mailbox for that one.
So there is an avenue for you to sign up. But again, we can't force people to. One of the new projects we're actually working on in finance is transitioning away from a third-party payment vendor. Right now, we outsource check sending and ACHing. What we're finding is that service comes out of Florida. And we've had local vendors complain to us about getting checks in a timely manner, some as high as 3, maybe 4 weeks before they get the payment. And so we're going to try and move some of those services in-house, as well as convert everybody to electronic funds transfers, so that way we can electronically put it in their bank versus issuing a check. Again, saving on postage and all the other things that are associated with it.
Do you know what the amount for postage is?
Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact amount of postage, but I could take a look at what we do citywide.
So just piggybacking off of just his question, is there an option to maybe create an incentive program for those folks that are a little hesitant to sign up for whether it be electronic billing or ACH?
Yeah, I've seen it in other cities, actually. We've already doing some research on the back end before we bring this to council. There have been as high as getting a credit if you do sign up for electronic, either mailing and or ACH, because it does relieve a lot of the issues as far as applying payments and or receiving the information. Again, we can't force people to do it. And as of right now, it's not something I've wanted to bring forward to council because there's been a lot larger issues in front of them to deal with.
Yes.
JC, can you give us more detail about what that means that the city might be heading into a recession? What does that look like and mean in maybe a Eagles view?
In the grandest, I guess, eagle-eye view of you're looking at less revenues today into the city. Either A, people can't pay, or B, the valuation of properties, this, that, and the other would go down as well. So if you go back to as far as 2008, you had a lot of people walk away from their homes. And so we weren't collecting property taxes at that point in time. So again, I don't think it's going to be as full-blown as that, but just data points itself that way. Now, hopefully that isn't the case. And we don't necessarily see what we've seen in recent history.
Go ahead, JC.
Do we have a postage number back there? For finance or for city? For the city. 134. So I'm getting that we, to date, for this fiscal year, have spent $134,000 citywide on postage.
Thank you.
There's at least 14,000 utility billing accounts, and there's 12 months.
As I recall, my Pacific Power bill does have a 50-cent credit since I pay using ACH payment. That's automatic.
Now I'm going to move on to a really exciting topic, PERS, and some of the other auxiliary programs. So we do. I'm going to talk about lodging tax, debt service, both for the Bancroft and the general obligation bonds, and then environmental waste fees fund before I get to PERS. So lodging tax is on page 289. The revenue is collections from all lodging taxes. The expenditure, we do have a small admin direct charge, which is finance's time for looking over the receipts. We have some indirect charges for the transfers to the capital funds. So we have accounting who has to move all of the funds to where the Muni Code says it's supposed to go. And then we do have contractual services, which is audit fee in this fund. We choose to do 4 lodging entities a year, and we send an auditor into a lodging tax entity, and we have them audited. And that rotates on a year-to-year basis. So the remainder of the resources after those expenses are paid are transferred to tourism, public safety, parks, economic development, and downtown development, lands and building projects, which is parks and tourism facility projects. If revenues do come in over budget, extra balance will be transferred to the next year, or we have done a supplemental budget to increase those transfers amounts. And what that looks like is on page 287. So part of the history here too is there are different rates because at different point in time the ORS changed, so that 7% is more or less grandfathered in. At another point in time, 2% was instilled and then 3%. For a total of 12%. And then as that is factored out amongst the different areas in which we transfer or the Muni Code was deemed to give those programs funds, you can see all the way to the right, there is a percentage of every dollar and where it goes for the city as far as lodging tax that is collected. The DMO is in that very top line of that 40%. It's actually 28% of every dollar by contract. And with this estimated revenue amount of about $2.5 million, the DMO will collect roughly about $713,000. Actually, let me pause there before I move on to the next one.
I don't think the page number is correct for what you're showing here. I'm not 100% sure here. I'm looking at the chart and it doesn't look the same. And
Page 289.
289?
Yeah, sorry, that's my bad, 289.
Thank you. Thought I was going crazy.
The first typo we found.
I think it's right in the book though, at least.
JC, I note that on that chart that you've got on the screen, in the middle raise of lodging tax, we have some allocated to tourism-related facilities. In the very first column, we have some related to parks. Would there be times that tourism-related facilities and parks are both the same thing, receiving money?
So yes, they both receive money. No, they're considered two distinct separate accounts based on the Muni Code. So the tourism-related facilities, it does go into its own account number, and then it is utilized by park staff typically for lands and building projects, and you would see that as lodging tax in the capital pages in the LB section. The amount on the bottom section that is going to parks is going to help support actual operations.
Thank you.
I'm going to check my page number now. The Bancroft Fund on page 300. So these are borrowings from finance LIDs, which are local improvement districts, assessments, payments on assessments. And then the expenditure is debt service on interfund loans and bonds outstanding. Those of you who weren't here, the Solid Waste Capital Construction Fund gave a loan to the Bancroft Fund some years ago, and any monies that we are correcting off these LIDs, we send them back to where that loan is. We still have, was it $475,000? $400,000 owed as far as that loan. Does anybody have any questions on that? There's not a lot to this one. The next is page 302, general obligation, 302, general obligation bonds. So our general obligation bonds has technically expired. However, the way property taxes work, the city does collect its money well after the period because it is actually a lien on that property. And so once all liens are settled, this will discontinue. But as money still comes in from delinquent amounts, basically people not paying their property taxes, this comes into this fund. What we do by ORS is we are required to send these back to the general fund. And so this is just a small amount left owing. We appropriate the entire amount that we see available on the AR, and it's only about $1,700 left. It doesn't mean that we're going to collect all $1,700 in this next year. It's just giving us the flexibility to move that to the general fund if that were to be the case. Does anybody have any questions regarding this one? Environmental Waste Fees Fund. This is for the environmental program fee charged per ton of refuse collected by sanitation haulers and the transfer station per the solid waste franchise agreements. The expenditure is purely a pass-through, and it goes to the city county solid waste agency to coordinate expenditures for cleanup sites. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? Okay. And PERS. Page 314. So per council direction, a side account was created through the EIF, the Employer Incentive Fund, with a 25% match of the contributed $2 million, which again is $500,000, so a total of $2.5 million of a side account created with PERS that would be amortized over the next 20 years. We made that deposit shortly before July 1st of 2023. We started July 1st of 2023. The current discount rate is 0.96 of savings. To date, since July 1st of 2023, the city has seen a drawdown of about $380,000 of those funds. Last year, I believe at the same point in time, I think the drawdown was about 193.
JC, the side account discount, 0.96, is that based on a fiscal year or calendar year?
Sorry, yeah, it's based on a biennium.
Biennium.
And that rate actually does change from biennium to biennium. Last biennium, it was a little bit over 1, and now it is slightly below 1.
Is that 25 to 27 or 20?
Yes.
Okay.
So these are the rates that we will see in the fiscal year 26 budget. So currently, right now, that rate is slightly higher as far as the discount, but this is the fiscal year 26 recommended budget that we're presented, and this is the rate that we already know and is locked in that they've communicated back to us.
So the existence of the side account means that 0.96% is not assessed, right? That's the savings.
Kind of. A little bit more complicated than that. I think of it for every dollar that we are paying in wages, we get 0.96% savings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's a little bit more complicated and nuanced in how they give us that information. Man, if we could only just keep PERS rates from climbing. So the chart on the right, you'd see where our rates have been over the last few years, and you could tell they have been doing nothing but going up pretty much. For the 25 to 27 biennium, this is our actual rates that we pay for Tier 1, Tier 2, the OPSRT General, and the OPSRT Police and Fire. And again, there is that 0.96 savings of the side account that would net in between each of those rates. And it's not different for any one of the tiers. It's the exact same for each of the tiers. What does that look like as far as total costs? The yellow is our actuals. These are audited actuals that you can kind of see that since 2024, since 2026, we've almost doubled in PERS costs to the city. 2025 is an estimate where we probably will be close to double. And if we are at 100% employment and realize the estimation of overtime and all the other things that we pay for our personnel, that these would be what our PERS costs would realize to as an estimation. And that's all I have for you for the auxiliary stuff. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions? Thank you. Are there any comments from the public regarding the Administrative Services Department presentation? Seeing none. Are there any general questions or requests for information from members of the Budget Committee? Yes.
Well, I may land myself in the same place I did at our last meeting, but as I'm looking at the packet for the council meeting tomorrow, I'm seeing there's a resolution for a salary reconfiguration. So when I look at the fiscal year budget packet that we're looking at now, I'm seeing PERS represented for the fiscal years. I'm seeing insurance, workers' comp, and all these other things. But have I overlooked a schedule to show me, what the salaries were in fiscal year 23, 24, 25? Can you direct me to that for a comparison?
So I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but in your book on page 339, there is an appendix L.
Okay.
JC, what page?
339. And this gives the information for all the positions in the city, their salaries as of January 1st of 2025. And again, they may be subject to change pending labor negotiations.
So to me, that almost feels like, are we tonight approving as of January 1st, 2025? Where will I find fiscal year 26, for example?
So you as a budget committee member are not necessarily in charge of approving a salary or a negotiation amount. That is up to council to approve the negotiation of those contracts.
Okay, so
what is in front of you is potentially financial recommendation of what we estimate potentially where that could land for each of those bargaining units. Doesn't mean that that's what's going to come to fruition, though.
Okay, and so that it's just simply not open for review for the budget committee, correct? Okay, thank you. And I did have a follow-up question, not directly related to that, though. Earlier, when you were talking about the utility fees, I believe it was a question that the chair had. What people are unable to pay has increased from $50,000 to $72,000. Is there I often see people upset about their utility bill, that very little goes to water, but a lot of money goes elsewhere within the bill itself. Is there a broader strategy for addressing that? I mean, you mentioned a recession, or is it just simply a fact of life that we must deal with?
No, actually, I think starting last year, Jason, we really took a look at the delinquency program, and any fund, any program area that is receiving money from the utility billing, pays into that program. So I think the jump that we kind of made in last year's budget was to show that we recognize that as a staff and where we should be as a position for utility assistance, that everybody should have some skin in the game because everybody does have their own rate on there.
Okay. And I would like to say thank you, JC, for the modernizing of the document itself, and for all the departments for your presentations. Thank you very much. And thank you for answering my questions.
Further requests for information or comments? Councillor King.
I just had a general comment. One, I want to commend the Budget Committee members for asking questions and being open, and conflict is okay. Sometimes, I don't know what people's relationship is to conflict, but it's a positive thing, not a negative thing. And the other thing I want to commend is the staff's response to disagreement or questions, because that's how we make progress. And so that type of culture is something to strive for, and I think this year was better than last year, and next year will be even better. But I just want to thank the Budget Committee members for speaking up, and if there was a disagreement or a question and misunderstanding that, or if there was a disagreement. And then I think the staff adequately handled those disagreements in a professional manner. And we got more work to do because there's some information we don't have. So, and the council needs to follow through on that.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd like to second your comments and particularly appreciate the staff and the work that went into preparing this budget. It's a wonderful document. We need to have 2 separate votes, so I would now entertain a motion to...
I've got a brief presentation just to recap to help with the standpoint of motions for property tax rate.
Oh, please. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so that's great. So just like the other ones, if Chair, you can ask for tentative approval of the items discussed today, then I'll go into approval of the budget.
I would entertain a motion to approve the recommended budget for the departments discussed.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Sure, Terry, go ahead.
This is just for the items discussed tonight, and then later on the agenda, we will have a separate vote that will approve the entire budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion? Member Collins.
I'd like to make a motion that the committee approve the budget items discussed tonight.
Is there a second? Councillor King. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the recommended budget for the departments presented tonight. All those in favor, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Okay. Budget Committee members, I'm here to help with the budget recap and address the next 2 motions for your consideration. Just to recap the budget process, Phase 1 is propose the budget. Phase 2 is approve the budget, which is Budget Committee. Phase 3 is adopt the budget, would be City Council. They'd be doing that in June. And then the 4th phase would be any adoptions throughout the year. Right now, we're moving into Phase 2, approving the budget. We've gone through the calendar here. Phase 2, approve the budget. Final motions and actions to complete the city's budget. committee requirements and approve the budget. 1, approve the budget in total, which would be seen on page 38, and 2, approve property tax rate, which is on page 52. So you've got to approve the permanent rate of $4.13 per thousand of assessed value, and also we'd be looking for you to approve public safety operating levy at $1.79 per thousand. This allows us to be able to, in the future, be able to tell the assessor that we are wanting to actually do our levy of our full taxes. So the first motion that's in front of you, and this is a sample motion, would be a motion to move that the Budget Committee of Grants Pass approve the budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2026, or as amended in the amount of $240,006,044.
Would anyone like to make the motion? Councillor King.
I move that the Budget Committee of the City of Grants Pass, the Honorable City of Grants Pass, Oregon, United States of America, approve the budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2026, as amended in the amount of $240,006,442 for the benefit of the city and the freedom of its citizens.
Is there a second? Councillor Riker. Thank you. Let's do a roll call vote.
Is there an opportunity for discussion here?
If you wish.
Is that okay? I mean, I still struggle just a little bit, and I really want to take the opportunity to thank the staff and fellow committee members. I've spent a lot of time on this, and as you all hear, I still struggle to stay in my lane. I have, and even as recent as Public Safety Advisory Committee today, still continued to learn the difference between the Budget Committee and the Council's role in setting level of service. With that said, I'm not comfortable passing the budget as is. Tonight we've heard words like placeholders, allocations for council. We've seen in other parts of the budget that we have made adjustments to FTEs without council going through the process of identifying that as a level of service. When I go back to my budget committee orientation, I do see that it is within our rights to make revisions to the proposed budget. Having sat in this room for many meetings and listened to council take beating over funding mechanisms for public safety, hearing for years and years our chiefs talk about the need for additional funding, I don't think I'm overstepping my boundaries in saying that the opportunity for us as budget committee to make revisions and, like in other departments, have placeholders or allocations for council to decide on would be beyond our scope of work as it relates to public safety. It's an elephant in the room. We need it. I'm not trying to advocate for a level of service. I'm just trying to set the council up for future discussions around level of service and empower them to make decisions that don't go back to their constituents asking for additional fees and taxes.
Other comments? Councillor.
So I have two questions then. If this were not passed tonight, would there be another budget committee scheduled? That's the first question.
There would have to be.
Okay. And then my second question is, I remember we have scheduled level of service. I can't remember when that is.
June 30th.
Okay. And is that related to what Terry is discussing, or am I conflating?
No, I believe they're directly related.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
A question, if I may, during discussion. The council can make revisions to the approved budget by up to a certain limit?
Yeah, the legal authority of the council is to change any amount, actually, after the approval of the budget committee. There is a 10% amount where if the council changes anything above 10%, that they need to send it back to the budget committee.
Thank you. I think that clarifies the process.
Okay.
Please, we're still in discussion on the motion on the floor.
So this is a general statement in regards to this entire process. As we all can see, the budget is what makes the city run. The problem that I see in this city is that unless we do something, and so that whether this is the right place to say this or not, but whether we do something to rectify the direction that our city is going into and the direction that we are going down in regards to the unhoused part of our population. What is a glaring fact is the fact that, we talked a little bit in the budget in regards to what is being spent on resting sites. That's a drop in the bucket into comparison as to I'll just say what that portion of our population is costing this city. And, it's pretty sad when you get off of you can just pick either exit to get off of I-5 and drive down into Grants Pass. And what you're seeing now is you're seeing empty buildings, you're seeing empty businesses. Downtown is absolutely loaded with empty offices. Nowhere is that in these books. None of that is reflected in these books. And so what's going to continue to happen unless we work as a city to get this rectified, and again, I personally do think that it's very relevant to the budget because of the fact that we have to have revenues. Well, in order to have revenues, we have to have people. And people have to be willing to spend money, open businesses, and do all of these things that make a city thrive. We cannot survive in the same manner if we allow and we continue to allow the degrading of our lifestyle here in the city of Grants Pass, because people are going to get tired of it, and the population is going to go down. Businesses are going to continue to shutter. And so I feel sorry for the future budget committees that have to deal with this, especially when you see things like PERS. And that is a ginormous part of this budget, and it continues to rise every single year. And yet the lifestyles and I'll just say the lifestyles and the happiness and the thrivingness of the citizens of this city continue to go in the opposite direction. So we need to rectify that as a city. And if we can turn this around and get our city back to a thriving city, the budget will take care of itself, because people are going to be spending money and they're going to be happy. We're going to attract visitors to this city. But to be quite honest with you, my wife and I we're having discussions about the possibility of moving. And the only reason we would move is because of the direction that this city is going in. I'm not making that decision yet because I'm a fighter. But that's what I think is the elephant in this room. The amount of calls that go to, that's fire and police. Again, their budget, those are the two biggest components in our budget, but look how much of the resources are being spent on this part of the population that is quite minute. So I just wanted to make that comment, and I want to see the best for this city, and the only way we're going to do that is we're going to have to make some very important decisions very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pelfrey.
Yeah.
Other comments on the motion on the floor? Yes.
I echo what Mr. Hopkins so eloquently said and agree with Mr. Pelfrey on a lot of his points. I'd like to add that I do have some discomfort moving forward in this part of our agenda, approving the budget, when so many of the big discussions, the elephant in the room, as he says, will not be addressed except by council on June 30th, the last day of the fiscal year. So you've got some major items within the city's budget that on that very last day are discussed minus the budget committee. And that brings me concern, and I'm completely open to having it explained to me better, perhaps, to alleviate that concern. But as I stand right now, that is where I'm at.
Yeah, I'd like to hopefully comment and hopefully put everybody's mind at ease. What you approved tonight would be potentially going to council on June 18th and then approved for July 1. Part of our ORS and rules say if we don't have an approved budget by June 30th, we don't come in and operate as a city. So as part of the process, we need to ensure that we do approve and adopt a budget. That being said, adoption of this budget doesn't preclude that council would make any changes in the future. There's ample opportunities in ORS that allow for council to make those financial changes all the way up until June 30th of the following year. So again, adopting this budget or approving this budget doesn't necessarily mean that council won't have the latitude to make changes in the future in that next budget cycle.
Chair.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Well, there is a council meeting tomorrow with the resolution on the table. Can you help me understand the timing of it with the budget committee ending tonight and then that coming to a motion tomorrow? It's 3.4 million increase, is that correct?
I don't know what are the 3
Page 56, it says personnel services in total are projected to increase 3.4 million in fiscal year 26.
So
is that already within this budget that I'm seeing here? Or is that the pay raises? That's the comparison that I'm not able to find and see.
That is all bargaining units throughout the city, negotiated and not negotiated. So in non-negotiation years, we have to put place markers in for those non-negotiated finalized contracts. There's nothing that actually requires council tomorrow to even make a decision on non-bargaining.
Okay.
However, this gives a place marker for there to be a decision and a jumping off point as to where we go as far as financially being able to have the latitude to actually operate in the future. Most of the time, I would recommend shooting a little bit high and then coming in low, so that way we don't have to do a bunch of supplemental budgets throughout the year.
Okay, and again, I see the supplemental budget, that'll be June 4th, so that's nearing. I do have one final question. As a gauge for what the city is facing this year, the city of Grants Pass, with the homelessness, with the pay raises that haven't happened in a long time, and the city staff absolutely deserve to be paid what is due to them. I am not contesting that at all. Please know that. Your positions are incredibly valuable. JC, you were just explaining tonight, you've got 14 FTE and 7 positions on that one slide alone covering all of that. I mean, I understand how that works. But can you possibly give me in recent history where the city has struggled with such major areas of finance that the budget committee did not help, that the council took it on themselves? I did see in the document that fiscal year 24 saw a higher FTE and some other things. Perhaps it's been as recent as just a couple years ago. Is this something the city wants to take on going forward without their budget committee, is the bones of what I'm asking?
Historically, cities throughout the state of Oregon, with our budget law and the way it is also, city councils take on the responsibility of determining community level of service and then determining funding sources and or reduction in services at a city council level. And then sometimes the voters have to approve certain funding options. If it's, say, a levy, if it's a utility fee, council has an opportunity to implement a utility fee without a vote. Council implemented the utility fee, and councils have, that's becoming more popular. Those utility fees, when they're implemented, don't go to a request of the budget committee to review that. That is a policy decision at a council level. Those individuals have been elected by their constituents to make those decisions. Where budget committees are there to make sure that the dollars are allocated appropriately to council's policies, making sure that if that public safety utility fee is being utilized for public safety and appropriately and not utilized in some other form or fashion. There are a lot of decisions that would need to be made with a number of the things we're talking about, from what are we going to do with level of service when it comes to our resting sites? How's that going to play out in the legal process? providing flexibility for councils to have some dollars to negotiate for our bargaining units, and staff are extremely pleased, because with some bargaining units, not non-bargaining, but with some bargaining units, you have to show a reasonable and a fair ability to bargain, and if not, then you're as a city, you're in violation. So we have to provide flexibility, and we've provided, the budget represents flexibility for council to look at a number of different options. And like JC said, throughout the year, the council may need to look at changes, but from a staff perspective and the level of service as defined by council at the moment, we've tried to provide a responsible budget that provides the most flexibility for council to make decisions in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Kubik. And I do want to say, just as Mr. Hopkins did, I absolutely want to stay in my lane as a budget committee member. It's not my intent to question outside of that. It's more of as a first-year budget committee member for a city, gaining an understanding where I'm not visually finding it. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
I do want to add just one piece of information that may help to show the changing process. So that June 4th supplemental budget that is coming up, that is for June 30th of 2025. So it will make an adjustment to the current budget that we are in, almost up until the wire. So we constantly are looking at where our programs are at and ensuring that we come under budget. And sometimes we miss the mark, and we need to do those supplemental budgets in order to make sure that we ensure that we are under budget.
Thank you, JC. I appreciate it.
So would adoption of the budget establish salaries?
No.
We have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. Are we all ready to go to a vote? Please indicate by yes or no. Victoria Marshall?
Yes.
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 Staying in my lane? Yes.
Agreeing with most of the comments, yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Chair votes yes. Motion carries.
There's one more motion also that we're looking at here, and this is an important motion because in order for us to receive the revenues that we're estimating we're going to receive, we need a motion stating that the city will be approving the property tax rates at our full amounts. We are at our full amounts at the permanent property tax rate in $1.79. So the motion is behind me to allow us to be able to have those funds.
And please, legally, when you read your motion, put all of the decimal places in there.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the Budget Committee of the City of Grants Pass adopt property taxes for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2026 at the rate of 4.1335 per $1,000 of assessed value for the permanent rate tax levy, and in the amount of $179 for the public safety operating levy.
Second.
Did I hear a second?
Yes. Christian.
Yes.
Christina, all right. Just to clarify, we're approving, not adopting? Is that right? Okay.
Yes, approve. You're approving. Council adopts at their next meeting.
Yes.
Just a point of clarification, do we need to say in the amount of 1.79?
I think it was stated 1.79, so. Yeah, I think we're okay. Thank you for the clarification.
I was more worried about the 0.1335.
Okay, I think we're ready to go to a vote on this. Please indicate yes or no in turn. Victoria?
Yes.
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 Motion passes
Great.
unanimously.
Thank you very much, Budget Committee members. And I want to say that I know it was a struggle with some of the questions you had, but I think one of the things that it did during this session is it highlighted the importance of some of the big issues that we have coming forward, especially when it comes to some of the services that we're providing in association with public safety, police and fire, and dispatch and emergency services. And then also some of the things that we've been addressing now because of House Bill 3115 and how that's affecting our community. So if anything, this provides in your actions and your discussions, your heartfelt discussions this evening and throughout the other evenings, shows a true desire and an exclamation mark for council and to focus on a few things from a policy perspective in the future. I am confident that council has heard you clearly in the community and that we will be working on those things together to solve some of those issues. I greatly appreciate the Budget Committee for providing an opportunity by allocating the resources for council to make those decisions that will help us move forward in the future. I want to also thank Mindy and JC and everyone from the Finance Department and all of the amazing colleagues that I work with, and only some of them are here tonight, but we work with 250 amazing people, and couldn't do any of this without all of them. It's a team effort, but again, thank you very much for your time and consideration of the budget.
We're not done yet.
No.
We're going to adjourn the Budget Committee and reconvene as the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee, and the Budget Officer will conduct an election of chair and vice chair.
If I could, I'll just, if we can reconvene, I would like to convene this meeting for May 20th of the Grants Pass Urban Renewal Agency. And as the budget officer, before I provide my budget message, I would like to ask the Urban Renewal Agency Board if they would open up the table for nominations for chair. Any nominations for chair for the urban area, Urban Renewal Agency?
Nominate Tom Bradbeer.
I've got a nomination, Tom Bradbeer. Do I have any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the nominations. So can I get a vote in favor of Tom Bradbeer for chair? Can I start with Mr. Pelfrey?
Yes.
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 Abstain?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay, with that, I turn it over to the chair. Chair, I think you're up to elect a vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kubik. The floor is open for nominations for vice chair of the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee.
I'll nominate Joel King.
Rick Riker seconds. Rob Pell moved that Joel King be elected vice chair. Can we start again? Mr. Pelfrey?
Yes.
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 Lots of procedure here.
Yes.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So that's felt awfully similar to a meeting we had a couple of nights ago, and unfortunately it is a procedural thing that we have to follow according to Oregon Revised Statute. So tonight, as your budget officer, I'm going to provide you with a budget message, a budget summary, capital project review, and hopefully approving the budget for the Urban Renewal Agency. For financial reporting purposes, the agency is a component unit of the city, but it truly is separate from the budget committee. You are your own separate entity. That's why we had to go through the process that we just went through. It is an Oregon law thing, and so we had to follow those guidelines. Although we are also following the same budget process. After my budget message and hearing that, we will have to ask for public comment. Ultimately, you will need to make some formalized motions to approve the budget for City Council to ultimately potentially adopt in the future. Just like any of our other programs we've talked about, this does follow the strategic plan. An Urban Renewal Agency really focuses on four main points: fiscal stability, economic growth, housing and homelessness and infrastructure are all part of the plan and how it can impact and have a positive impact on our community. For fiscal year 26, this is the 9th annual budget for the agency. So the agency is growing stronger each year. The budget accounts receiving tax increment revenues, which I'll talk about in a bit. Revenues are applied to eligible projects based on city council prioritization. So we do have a plan, and we try to allocate resources associated with the plan that they have provided. And there is a full list on Appendix A, which is on pages 4 through 6 on your handout there that you have on your dais. So an urban renewal agency really is an economic tool used by local governments across the country and in the state of Oregon. It's specifically focused on trying to alleviate or remove blighted areas, areas that are underdeveloped or have some major infrastructure challenges that have created private investment to not want to invest. It started a long time ago, and we've been implementing and utilizing it throughout Oregon for many years. So the way it works, get my little highlighter out here, is we start an urban renewal agency. And with an urban renewal agency, you have a frozen tax base. So in the very beginning of an urban renewal agency, an agency is created. And we have, and I'll show you on the next slide, our districts that are impacted by the urban renewal agency. In year 1, when the increases occur, say we are betting on 3% each year, that 3% of growth goes to the urban renewal agency. The taxing districts are frozen for the life of the district for the dollars that were calculated when the urban renewal agency was created. The increases in the tax base all goes to the urban renewal agency, and that's shown in here. That's the tax increment financing. These are then specifically utilized to help incentivize private investment. The concept is if we utilize public dollars to incentivize private investment at the end when the urban renewal agency is closed, it'll have a greater impact on the ultimate tax base, and it'll increase revenues in the end when that's done and benefit everyone. So the taxing agencies associated that are within our urban renewal agency are as follows, which are behind me. Some people have said, oh my goodness, schools are affected. We're taking money away from the schools. And that's a legitimate initial concern. When it comes to the schools, though, the state of Oregon a number of years ago changed the taxing and the way they fund schools to where it is done basically on more of a per capita basis. It's not done by the individual taxing district. So the schools still get the dollars whether there's an urban renewal agency or not. They still get the same amount of dollars. It does not affect our education system. The way urban renewal agency dollars work is we identify blighted conditions within the urban renewal agency, and I'll talk about that and show you a map of where that is. We take, for instance, public investment, which is the urban renewal agency. Say, for instance, a 10-acre piece of property that had some old structures on it, like an old mill or something along those lines, and it was an encumbrance to development. No one wanted to touch it. Maybe it didn't also have water and sewer and transportation infrastructure to it, so it was sitting there for many years in a blighted condition. An urban renewal agency can go in, can purchase those acres, could then clean off the property, clean up any brownfield issues, can install public infrastructure, alleviating some of those encumbrances on the property, and then making that property a valuable piece of property where the public would then want to invest. So you take public dollars, you improve the conditions, which incentivizes private investment, and then builds the tax base. These are just some pictures of some that have happened before. Tom McCall Park in Portland is a big one. They took a very blighted area in the downtown Portland area, which was an old, I think it was an old defunct sort of highway or main thoroughfare, and they made it a giant park, which ultimately increased the value of the area in the downtown Portland area. Here is, I believe, in Barcadero, in San Francisco. This was done with urban renewal dollar agency dollars, and it had a huge impact economically for that community. So our urban renewal agency is here on the map behind me. It represents 18% of the area of Grants Pass. Urban renewal agencies for a city our size can go up to 25%. When we created this urban renewal agency, we defined it at 18%. If you looked at the zoning map of where those yellow areas are on the map, they're primarily industrial, business park, and commercial zones. There are some residential on the sides of the commercial zones, so we do have some housing associated also in our urban renewal agency. Here is a list when the plan was adopted. Numbers have changed from a standpoint of dollar figures to some degree, but the plan with the projects, we have a number of projects listed there. These are estimated dollars. These are not set in stone. Council's added and removed projects throughout the years and also changed the dollar amounts to those allocations. You'll notice that their water plant and the sewer plant have 18% of the debt going to that. We are actually utilizing the urban renewal agency to help pay for a water plant loan, and we're doing that, and that's represented in the budget. The sewer, we have not gone to that extent. Why is it only 18%? Because it needs to match the area of grants of our urban renewal agency, which is 18%. So here, this is on page 1 of your document that you have in front of you. This is the net current tax increment financing and the revenues that we're looking at. We're projecting about $2.6 million for 2026. And as you can see, that slowly grows each year, which is a positive. I think the first year we were in it, we collected about $500,000. So that's been growing, which is a positive. This can be seen on page 3. This represents the recommended budget for the urban renewal agency, where total requirements and total resources are $9.2 million. Special payments out at $7 million. And one of the reasons for that is that's a big lump sum dollars that we've put into one pretty much fund to allow the most flexibility for council when it comes to allocating the resources for future projects. The Budget Committee's tentative approval will be for the allocation of $9,064,250 in the above categories, which provides that maximum flexibility that I was talking about. In the past, when we first started the program, we had dollars in multiple different line items, and they were stuck in those line items. And then if something came up, say a developer came forward and wanted to utilize $2 million of our urban renewal agency, we would have had to go through a big budget process because we didn't have the flexibility. So today what we do is we put the main dollars into one account that provides council the flexibility to spend the dollars accordingly as something may come up. The Grants Pass Urban Renewal Agency will be an effective tool for economic development, removal of blight, creating economic opportunities, bringing state resources and money to Grants Pass, accomplishing our goals. Some of the things that council's working on in the future is we're going to be having discussions about a catalyst project. We have an urban renewal agency. We've been utilizing some grant funds to give to our businesses within our community, which has benefited them many times over. But one of the positives about an urban renewal agency is if we can have 1 or 2 big catalyst projects. We have recently purchased some property up, we call it the Washington property, it's the old hospital property. Council's interested in making that, maybe mixed-use housing. We can do that with urban renewal agency dollars to incentivize private investment. That could be a great catalyst project. There's some other projects that we'll also be talking about at a council level in the future. And with that, I'll pause. And if you have any questions before I move on to a potential sample motion for the urban renewal agency.
I'd like to ask about the 18% water treatment plant debt service on page 2. JC and I exchanged messages about this. Based on the financing plan that Mr. Kennedy presented to the workshop, I'm not sure that $438,000 is enough.
Well, we can always use more, but we are capped at the 18%.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
of course. But
yeah.
Should there be a larger allocation in this budget based on an expectation that the interest cost will be much more than this.
I see where your question lies, okay. Jason or JC, who wants to tackle that one?
I'm sure Jason will jump in and fill in the blanks on anything that I miss here. So a little while back, Jason brought this very issue to council because the URA wasn't contributing anything to the water treatment plant to date. And so what we brought forward was an estimated $56 million funding option, which is where the original plan was about 9 years ago of what it would cost at that 18%. Since then, it's up for potential interpretation as to what that 18% potentially means. And I'm sure Jason would gladly take more funds to help pay for the debt service on the water treatment plant.
So the short answer is yes, we would always take more funds to help with the water treatment plant. We did feel that because the plan was built around the borrowing of $56 million, using the 18% of the debt service on that $56 million was fair. And it helps the water fund a tremendous amount. So that's where that $438,000 came from. If the budget committee and or council wanted to look at increasing that to actually reflect 18% of the actual debt service, the water fund would never say no. But we did feel that it was in the spirit of the plan, and that does leave more resources to do those catalyst projects and to do more investment with the public and private partnerships for development, which brings more tax revenue. The water is not going to bring tax revenue, but it is a very important cornerstone of your community.
So if the Budget Committee does not approve enough for the debt service, 18% of it, what would the process be to adjust that? Would the Budget Committee have to be reconvened?
So I would say that was council direction. And so council directed us to put that amount to be presented for the budget committee as far as the $438,000 that is represented. And again, it was based on a previous calculation of a lower debt service amount. And that calculation came out to be the approximate of the $438,000 throughout the remaining life of the URA.
And I'm going to take a stab at that question maybe a little bit different way, because I think I heard a different question. I think the short answer is no, because the entire balance of the Urban Renewal Agency is allocated. If council chose to spend more on debt service, they could easily move it within there, because that's just moving between the lines. Is that a correct statement, JC?
Yeah, we'd probably have to do a budget adjustment or supplemental budget if they were to be moving that kind of allocation. But there is availability and maximum flexibility to make that movement if that is the choice of the council.
So the Urban Renewal Board could make the budget adjustment without convening the Urban Renewal Budget Committee. Okay. I think it's going to be much more than this. Another question, if the other day the issue came up of the boundary of the Urban Renewal District.
Yes.
And that there's not much on the south side. And I've forgotten who asked that question, but what is the process for expanding the Urban Renewal District if the community and the council, the Urban Renewal Board, felt that was an appropriate thing to do?
So there's a limiting factor when it comes to the expansion of the Urban Renewal Agency and how far you can go. You may recall that we did do an expansion to cover the pool. So we cherry stemmed out and we covered the pool because at one time we were going to do the pool. I don't know if Bradley, you have the number, if you want to come up and talk about it. I forget what percentage is we can actually expand once we've adopted the 18%. I know we don't have the flexibility to go to the 25% though, I don't think.
Right. The ORS does have a outline for how urban renewal plans get amended. So, yes, it could go up from the 18%, but remember you have all of the taxing entities have to be noticed and have to approve and sign off on that. So as you expand that 18% and you go higher, that also means more money is withheld from those other tax entities, including the city of Grants Pass. You know, we're the largest. Josephine County is next. So I think the short answer is yes, it is possible to go through an amendment process under ORS, but that would have some research. We would probably want to do run some numbers on that.
The addition of the land to include the pool didn't require that process.
That was a minor amendment.
And can there be another minor amendment?
It was a minor amendment, and also Bradley was saying it was a minor amendment because it also dealt with, I think, recreation facility, or so it was in a classification to where there was not the requirement to go out for the outreach to all the taxing districts. So it was very unique in nature because it was city-owned property, and it was because in that classification. If we were to try to pick up some more of the commercial property on the south end of 199, we would be looking at notification of all the taxing districts and approval of their consent in order for us to make an expansion. And again, it's a very small amount from what we can expand from the original adoption of the urban renewal agency area.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
Other questions, comments? I'm sorry. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to open to public comment. Is there anyone here from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on.
So, Chair, on the screen, we have a potential sample motion. And again, sort of like JC mentioned with regards to make sure it's 4.1335, we need to make sure from an urban renewal agency perspective that the language in that motion is followed pretty much to a T.
This is a lengthy motion. Who'd like to take it on? Councillor Riker, please.
I'd like to make a motion to move the Budget Committee of Grants Pass Urban Renewal Agency approve the property taxes for the 2025-2026 fiscal year tax increment for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes for the Grants Pass Urban Renewal Plan area under Section 1C, Article 1X of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457.
Is there a second? Thank you. Been moved and seconded that we do that. Once again, let's go around.
Hey, Chair, could you clarify who seconded that motion?
Kathleen.
So now you're ready for roll call.
Now we're ready for a roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Chair, I've got one more motion.
Please, bring it on.
Okay. We also have to declare the amount and the value of the urban renewal agency, and for this year's budget, we've got the $9,294,100.
We have a recommended budget, a recommended motion for the committee. Someone like to make that motion?
I move that the Budget Committee of the Grants Pass Urban Renewal Agency approve the budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2026, in the amount of $9,294,100.
Is there a second? Mr. Riker. Now, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
There's no more motions.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. I think we've concluded our business. Any last comments from members of the committee?
I would like to make a comment if you mind,
Please,
Chair.
go right ahead.
I just want to thank all of the Budget Committee members for spending the time. It is a lot. It's over 500 pages of information that you're trying to take in less than a week. We appreciate all of your comments and concerns. And again, it'll be part of our jumping off point of how we help inform council and tackle some of these issues. So again, I just want to thank you guys for all your time and effort today, and your service is very much appreciated.
Thank you, J.C.
Thank you.
Our meeting is adjourned.